Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm not really sure how to categorize this video, but for now I'm just going to call it layout design. Regular viewers of my channel have often commented about how complex my benchwork can be sometimes and how I make it look so easy. Some people have asked how I do it, so I've decided to answer that question by creating a short behind the scenes video revealing some of my techniques for designing my benchwork. I do it in the same CAD package as I use to design the whole layout, namely Third Planet. Now here is a view of the Sydney project. It is the lower scenic deck, which also contains the main staging yard. And you'll notice there are a lot of drawings around it. Whenever I'm ready to start a new area of benchwork, I pull up the layout design and start drawing what I need in the same scale as the layout. I'm going to draw your attention to a few things. Notice these long, narrow rectangles. These are all drawn a scale 7 feet long. The width is irrelevant. They are simply to determine where best to put the benchwork joints. Since in this layout design I'd already determined that I wanted to keep the benchwork sections at around 7 feet so that they could all stand vertically in a standard shipping container. You'll note that around the edges there are some various frames drawn, such as these over here. This one clearly is for that corner. This one that I'm circling now is for the rolling section, allowing me to walk in through the benchwork. Note that being a basement with the stairs in the middle, I can go all the way around and still have upright access because one simply walks down the stairs. But I don't have that luxury in my workshop, which is why I had to make an opening at some point, and I elected to do it here as being the most convenient place. This bit I've highlighted now is just a rough general arrangement drawing to figure out how I was going to make it work. These cross sections drawn along the top represent various places along this top side. This large rectangle at the back represents the wall, and then everything else that I've highlighted here represents the benchwork. Note that in the final version there will be no rear leg because it will be hung from a ledger board attached to the wall. The orange boxes on each of these sections represent the areas that I have to keep clear for running the two lower grades down to the lower staging yard. And we'll see that at the ends they are one above the other with space to put framing between them, whereas in the middle they are side by side. So I have to design joists that will allow for every situation. This little bit that you see highlighted at the moment was just a little test to see how efficiently I could cut them out of an 8-foot long sheet of plywood, and we can see that I can get 5 joists out of one 11-inch wide strip. Sometimes I just draw the framing on the plan, which we can see right here. This is the design for the workbench. Here are the pieces that I need for the tops with the dimensions, just so I can print out this portion of the plan and then take it out of the workshop, print everything to size without making any mistakes. I'm going to highlight the lower right corner of the design. Here I was working out where I could put all the cross joists so that they would miss the switch machines. All the little white circles show the switch machine locations. The black lines that run across it are where I decided the joists could go. And this rectangle that's now highlighted in light blue shows where the last frame ends, because this line where the mouse is now is the only sensible place that I could split it that didn't cut through a turnout. Now I have on occasion cut turnouts in half to get across benchwork joints, and it can be done. It makes it a little more complex, so I try to avoid it. And here I was able, during the design, to make sure there was one area where I could cut all the way across the benchwork without going through turnouts or being anywhere near switch machines. Let's look at another drawing quickly. This is the same layout plan, but it shows different benchwork patterns, because once I've finished doing all the areas I designed on the other plan, I just deleted everything and started again with a clean slate. Here we can see where I was working on the framing for the north side of the peninsula. And here the problem was not so much one of getting the structure to work, but of making sure that the frames would fit down the basement stairs. I have a width available of 35¼ inches, so I want to keep everything down to 34 inches or less, allowing for a little bit of leeway. This cross section at the end applies to this benchwork section that I've now highlighted. If we look at it, we can see that with the legs removed, it is fairly shallow. It is only about 30 inches deep, including the framing for the upper level. So that section can easily be tilted on its back and carried down the stairs. The next one, on the other hand, this frame highlighted now, this one contains a deep river valley, and if we look at this cross section, we can see that it's a lot deeper than the space available. So it can't be tilted on its back. It has to go through upright. But it's also more than 3 feet deep once I've allowed for the framing and the bits that are behind the backdrop. So this section that is now highlighted needs to be removable, which allows the remainder of it to be narrower than the stairwell and therefore fit down upright. Most of the sections along this side are also deep and will also be carried through vertically. These two cross sections here are for the next two frames, and these are of such a size that once the legs are removed, they will fit down the stairwell upright, provided the sub-road bed for the reversing loop is detachable. Then the last straight section along this side, I got even more inventive, and I designed it in such a way that it can go down the stairs on the diagonal. Here we see the diagonal lines, making sure that it will indeed fit in that direction. Let's move on to a different view now. Remove that layer, display that one. Here we can see how I worked out the framing above the main staging yard. Once again, we have a row of cross sections at various points along the back wall. The bit at the bottom that I've highlighted here in blue is the main staging benchwork. The bit at the top is the visible portion above it, and the bit in the middle is the mezzanine staging. Now, because of the limited clearance between the mezzanine staging and the main staging, I don't want any longitudinal framing at the front of this level. So I've made sure that I can hang it from the upper joists. So I've designed it in such a way that the framing for the upper level and the mezzanine level are the same H-shaped joists, which avoids the need for longitudinal front framing. Note that there is a bit of a fly in the ointment here. The ramp that goes up behind the mezzanine staging at the end by the workbench is at mezzanine level, gradually rising as we go along the layout until it reaches the far end where the ethanol plant is, and we can see that it is now fully in the framing for the upper level. But for much of its distance in the middle, it's going to be right in the way, so I've had to arrange for an alternative version of the joist with an extra tail on it. Now each joist is going to be different, as this cutout is going to be about 1/4 inch higher on each successive one, or lower depending on which way you're going. So I worked out a master version, here it is, I've got the mouse over now, with just a narrow slot in it. Here's an enlargement. We can see there is a narrow slot which I can widen in either direction or both directions to make each joist exactly the size it needs to be. And I figured that I needed 24 of the plain ones and 16 of the special ones. Well, actually I worked it out at 23 and 15, but I thought it advisable to have one spare of each size. So going back to the full size plan now, here I worked out how they could fit most efficiently on a standard sheet of plywood. We need 4 of those sheets and 1 of those, and that gives everything I need. Along with all the framing to go under the ethanol plant, note that there is a hole through the middle to allow for the 2-track short line staging yard. And those 18 joists all get cut out of the offcuts of these 2 sheets. And that will all be done on a CNC router for me. In fact, as I'm recording this video, I'm expecting it to be done tomorrow. So anyway, that is a little bit of an insight into how I make my benchwork look so easy. It's all a case of doing the homework before I get out to the workshop and start cutting wood. So I hope this has been interesting and informative, and I hope to see you back for next week's video, whatever that may be. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and bye for now.